So, you heard Donald Trump's a great businessman? Try this. Sea Mail from England, Aeroplane Magazine, the Trump Shuttle. It was great for the Trump ego. Those were Donald Trump's words on the day of his new airline's inaugural flight back in 1989. Perhaps its failure was unsurprising, but there was rarely a dull moment for those involved with the ill-starred Trump Shuttle. The uncensored thoughts of Donald J. Trump have on occasion been known, to put it diplomatically, to cause us a degree of consternation. Sometimes they don't seem all that funny, and so it was back in 1989 when, with typical bombast, he addressed a press conference to herald the launch of his new airline, the Trump Shuttle. Operating on the potentially lucrative shuttle route between New York, Washington, D.C. and Boston, the Tycoon's carrier would have some stiff opposition. Of Pan American, Trump told the gathered throng, quote, "I wouldn't fly them. They're losing money and their planes are old." To call the remark tactless would be an understatement. It was, after all, just a few months since Pan Am Flight 103 was blown up over Lockerbie. Trump Shuttle marketing director Henry Harteveldt wasn't happy. Quote, "That's one of the few occasions not only the airline's president Bruce Nobles but I gave Donald hell," Harteveldt says today. "I just said that you do not criticise another airline's maintenance. It is wrong. We all strive to maintain our airplanes well, but for the grace of God go we." There were a lot of people, especially in the New York area, who had lost friends and family on Flight 103 and were still very upset, understandably so. Well, karma is a bitch. A little more than 3 months after we started flying, one of our Boeing 727s landed with the nose gear up at Boston Logan. It was determined that it was not our fault, that there had been a, quote, legacy maintenance problem that had not been detected. Our pilots handled the incident well, our flight attendants handled the incident well, and there were no major injuries, but it was very, very embarrassing. Harteveldt was one of many seasoned airline industry campaigners who helped set up the airline. He had worked in advertising for American Airlines, marketing for TWA, and marketing and planning for Continental. Bruce Nobles, also ex-Continental, brought him in. As Harteveldt told Aeroplane, "It was a lot of fun. It was very chaotic. It was a startup situation. And as a startup, there are always more things to do and not enough people to do the tasks. What added to the challenge was that I left Continental for Trump Shuttle before the Trump organization had actually bought the airline." Some background is required. Eastern Airlines started the air shuttle in 1961, says Harteveldt. Texas Air Corporation bought Eastern, and it owned Continental. There was a plan to spin off the shuttle as a way to bring in money and to, frankly, help Texas Air in its battle with Eastern and the unions that was going on at the time. Frank Lorenzo, chairman of Texas Air, had met Donald Trump, and the two had a conversation about buying the shuttle. However, the unions at Eastern took legal action and successfully got a judge to say that the shuttle couldn't be just sold outright, but that there had to be an auction so the shuttle brought in its true value to the company. It became a bidding war, and the two finalists for the Eastern shuttle were the Trump Organization and America West Airlines, which saw the shuttle as a way to get a toehold into the Northeast. The Trump Organization purchased the shuttle from Texas Air for approximately $365 million. And with that, we got 22 Boeing 727s, a mix of 727-100s and 200s. One of the 727-100s we got was among Eastern's oldest 727s, from when they first started taking delivery in the 1960s. We actually wanted the shuttle to have fewer airplanes, roughly 16, and we were hoping to have a mix of 727s and DC-9s, but the deal that Lorenzo and the Trump Organization agreed to was 22 airplanes, all 727s. Trump himself had announced the purchase of Eastern Shuttle at his Plaza Hotel in Manhattan on 12 October 1988. Harteveldt was an early recruit. "I got to New York, I started my job, and we were building an airline without actually having an airline. That was a risk I was willing to take. I'd left a secure job in Continental for this startup, with a lot of other people did as well, people who'd come from other airlines. As marketing director, my job was to build the brand. What was Trump Shuttle going to be? I was involved in all the tasks you would expect a marketing head to be: livery, cabin design, advertising, frequent flyer, brand positioning, product development. At the beginning, Donald was very involved in things that were marketing focused, things such as cabin design, our loyalty program, advertising, promotions. But it's important to understand that the Trump Shuttle was its own business unit. We had our own president, Bruce Nobles. We had our own chief pilot. We were, for the most part, self-sufficient. Donald was involved only on things that were fairly major, especially once the airline was launched. PR was very important to him. Advertising was very important to him, because in that pre-internet era, those were two of the communications platforms that really helped to identify and create the image of the airline and position it in the consumer's mind. But he would get involved in other things, including the design of the magazine, certain aspects of the meal service that we offered, and even a frequent flyer, quote, thank you, unquote, direct mail campaign. Some of that influence was undeniably positive. In other ways, Trump betrayed his lack of understanding of the airline business in general and the shuttle in particular. Donald certainly insisted on a very opulent cabin, recalls Henry Harteveld. As he kept telling me, it's the Trump shuttle, and people had in his mind an expectation of this. We ended up spending more than $1 million per airplane, probably closer to $2 million, on renovation. That included maintenance, engine repair and overhaul, going through the airframes as well as what the passengers saw. Remember, these were some of the oldest 727s, and while Eastern kept them flyable, these were airplanes that were probably flying on the minimum of minimum equipment lists. They had not exactly received much tender loving care from Eastern because Eastern simply didn't have the cash. We put in very thick pile carpeting. That's lovely to have in a private jet. That's lovely to have in your home. On a commercial airliner? No, not very practical. He insisted that we put that carpeting down the tail stairs of the 727. Again, not practical. It added weight, and those stairs were used primarily by service personnel, inevitably in all types of weather, which in the northeast US includes rain and snow. That was not one of the better decisions. Bill Clinton, flying Trump when he was Governor Bill Clinton. He wanted to replace the aluminium door handles on the boarding door and other cabin doors with brass handles because he thought that would be more attractive. We talked him out of that. He wanted to put in real marble countertops in the lavatories. We had to investigate that and convince him that faux marble would be just as good. Another remark at one of the airline's early press conferences rather troubled marketing boss Harteveld. Donald said the Trump shuttle would be, quote, a diamond in the sky. After that, I said you may want a diamond in the sky, but we're starting with cubic zirconia. Again, these were old airplanes with rather grotty interiors. After Mr. Trump's statements, our advertising had to contain and manage consumer expectations. A lot of what we did with our PR and advertising had to make sure that people realised that at first, literally, the only thing that changed was the name. In one of our first advertisements, which we shot at Boston Logan, we filmed the workers putting a decal on the fuselage that said Trump over the Eastern Airlines name and logo. We were sending airplanes down to Orlando, Florida to be repainted and have a new cabin done. It took us several months to get the first of them in, but after that, the rest quickly followed. Using a 727-200, the inaugural Trump shuttle service operated from New York to Washington on 8 June 1989. At LaGuardia, passengers were greeted by a string quartet, complimentary champagne, and Donald himself. He described the whole venture as great for the Trump ego. Fog caused a 20-minute delay, but otherwise things went off without a hitch. It wasn't long, though, before the cracks started to show. We had a lot of challenges as a startup. Our competitor was Pan Am, and they ran a very good shuttle. What we learned through our research was that 40% of people preferred to leave on the hour and had some kind of loyalty towards either Eastern, Continental, or the one-pass frequent flyer program. Another 40% preferred the Pan Am product. We were really battling for 20% of the market. Because Eastern had been in such bad straits when we took over, we had something like 14% market share. And because Eastern had to be aggressive with its pricing, both retail pricing and corporate discounts, we had less than 14% of the revenue on the shuttle. Back in 1989, Amtrak, the US intercity rail operator, did not yet have the Acela high-speed train service. It had Metroliner between New York and Washington, but it was not high-speed. It was simply faster than average and had fewer stops. It was still a fairly long train ride, roughly 4 hours if I remember correctly. New York-Boston was also 4 or more hours on the train. The majority of people travelling between Washington and New York and between New York and Boston went by air. By the end of March or so of 1990, we had pretty much gotten to about 50% of the market and were able to command a slight revenue premium. From a marketing standpoint, we realised that the air shuttles were really time management tools. Our passengers didn't fly to earn frequent flyer miles or for snacks or the in-flight magazine or because we had outfitted the flight attendants with faux pearl necklace accessories as part of their uniforms. It was because they needed to get between New York and either Boston or Washington, D.C. in the fastest possible manner. That was core. Everything else was ancillary. Hartevelt and the others saw how difficult the situation was. It became clear to me that it was going to be a tougher road to profitability than we initially anticipated. When the Trump organisation bought the shuttle, the economy was relatively strong, real estate values in New York were strong, and Trump had invested in a variety of casinos in Atlantic City. The executive leadership of the shuttle had told Trump what they believed it to be worth, and we all felt that paying $65 million for it was too much money. And yet, caption left Donald Trump at the 1988 announcement of his $365 million purchase of the Eastern Airlines shuttle, the birth of the Trump shuttle. He paid $300 million too much for 22 old airplanes. We all felt that paying $65 million for it was too much money. We were concerned from the outset about our ability to not only turn a profit but service the debt. What we had heard was that they were reasonable business concerns, but that cash flow and profit from the real estate side of the house would at least compensate for any losses that the shuttle may incur during its startup phase. We all knew that we would not be profitable overnight. We knew that we would not be profitable within a year, but we expected to be well on the way towards being profitable. There were macroeconomic factors outside our control that occurred. The US went into a mild recession in late '89, and that recession started more in the northeast than the rest of the country. Real estate values softened in New York and elsewhere. There were some challenges that the casinos had, which have been documented in the New York Times and elsewhere. I should point out again that we were a freestanding business unit. We did not do anything with the Plaza Hotel or the casinos other than some joint promotional efforts. Also, tragically, there was a helicopter accident in the fall of 1989, and 3 of the casino executives were killed. I think that was very upsetting to Mr. Trump, personally as well as professionally. The recession intensified in 1990, and there were some concerns about what was going on leading up to the 1991 Gulf War. We started to see that demand softened for the shuttle. We had to become more aggressive with our pricing. Continental was competing out of Newark. There were some other airlines between New York and Washington, and Pan Am was competing aggressively, so there was a lot of competition in the market. It brought down the published fares and the corporate discount fares. We took certain steps to reduce our expenditure. We scaled back some advertising, we adjusted our catering, but an airline can't fix the economy. The shuttle's losses I don't think were terrible, but in the context of the larger financial challenges that Trump organisation was facing, things were starting to implode. Hartevelt left in 1990 in June. While I enjoyed working there and had a very good working relationship with Donald on the things where I did work with him, when I got a job offer to run marketing for a luxury hotel company in San Francisco, I took it. That month saw big changes for Trump shuttle as Bruce Nobles was ousted as president in favour of Richard Cozzi. The New York Times quoted Trump as saying of the airline, "It will be a financial success, but right now I'm upset with the people running it." Credit where it's due comes from the genial Hartevelt, now boss of travel data analyst Atmosphere Research. He did listen. He would say, "You're right," and if he didn't agree, he would always tell you why. But given Trump's ambitions, it must have come as a blow. He saw Trump shuttle as the potential anchor for possibly a larger airline. Let's put it this way. I don't think there were any of us who went to Trump shuttle with expectations that all we would be was an airline flying between Boston, New York, and Washington, D.C. We believed there was an opportunity to expand, either organically or through acquisition. While I was there, Donald made an unsolicited takeover bid for AMR Corporation, the parent of American Airlines. Bob Crandall of American threatened a lawsuit, and Trump sold his shares in AMR. I believe he made a profit. There was also, I think, a brief effort to buy Continental from Texas Air. Neither of those went anywhere. By September 1990, Trump shuttle's creditor banks decided they'd had enough. An injection of finance proved little more than a sticking plaster solution, nor could the banks find a buyer. Eventually, after lengthy negotiations, US Air was persuaded to step in. Trump shuttle was closed on 7 April 1992 to the disappointing end of its founder's airline dream. So, 22 clapped out old 727s for which $65 million was too much money. And the great businessman, the capitalist entrepreneur, Donald Trump paid $365 million for. And this is the corrupt, crony, capitalist, fat cat, trendy, money-grubbing arsehole that dumb Fuckistan has voted to erect as their groper-in-chief. And they're going to give him the nuclear football. and allow him to launch America's arsenal at whomsoever pisses him off. Somebody should have told him that airlines are just like farming. The way to make a small fortune is start with a big one. And if you buy a going concern and operate it as business as usual, it won't take long before you've got your big fortune turned into a little one. But when you pay 6 times the price of the assets, then a fool and their money are soon parted. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.